Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today, all about Solana. We've got a really interesting set of articles and research papers, and they're all kind of circling around this question: can Solana really challenge Ethereum?
Some people are even saying it could be an Ethereum killer.
Right. Some really strong opinions out there, and Solana's aiming to be, the fastest blockchain out there, but can it really live up to all this hype? Especially after that whole FTX crash.
Yeah, I think what's so fascinating about Solana is that it's not just like tweaking existing blockchain tech.
Yeah.
You know, this is a completely new approach going all the way back to 2017.
Okay, so let's rewind back to 2017. Anatoly Yakovenko, he's the co-founder of Solana. He had this, pretty radical idea. He wanted to build a blockchain that basically performed like a single superpowered computer.
Yeah.
Like he wanted to just obliterate the scalability issues that were, plaguing other blockchains at the time.
And that's where I think the story takes a really interesting turn.
Yeah.
Yakovenko, he found inspiration in a really seemingly unrelated area, cellular networks.
Oh, wow.
He realized that if telecom companies could figure out how to send, multiple calls over the same frequency, maybe blockchains could handle tons of transactions at the same time using similar principles.
So he's applying the logic of juggling calls on a cell phone to juggling transactions on a blockchain.
Exactly.
That's some serious outside-the-box thinking.
Yeah.
But how did he actually, make that happen?
Oh, that's where proof of history comes in, or POH for short. You can think of it like a global clock for the entire network, a way for all these computers that don't inherently trust each other to agree on the order of events.
Right.
And this lets Solana process transactions just super fast because it doesn't have to wait for confirmation from every single node on the network like some other blockchains do.
Hold on, a global clock for computers that don't trust each other? That sounds kind of mind-blowing.
It is pretty wild.
But how fast are we actually talking here? Give me some concrete numbers.
We're talking thousands of transactions per second, potentially even tens of thousands with all the upgrades that are in the works.
What?
To put that in perspective, Visa, a giant in the payments industry, can handle something like 1,700 transactions per second.
Okay.
Solana's leaving them in the dust.
That's seriously impressive. But Solana's not just about speed, right? You were saying earlier that it's this, fundamentally different approach to blockchain technology. What else sets it apart?
So Solana uses a bunch of other really clever mechanisms to achieve this, remarkable speed and efficiency.
Okay.
One of them is Gulfstream, and this is a transaction forwarding protocol, and it gets rid of the need for a mempool.
A mempool. For those of us who aren't, blockchain wizards.
Yeah.
What is that, and why does getting rid of it matter?
So imagine like a waiting area where all these transactions are hanging out before they can get processed.
Okay.
That's basically the mempool Gulfstream basically bypasses this waiting area, so it makes transaction processing way faster and more efficient.
Okay.
Then you've got C-level, which is a virtual machine that lets transactions be processed in parallel.
Parallel processing. So it's like having multiple checkout lines at the grocery store instead of everyone waiting in one giant line.
Yeah, exactly. As long as the transactions don't conflict, they don't involve the same accounts, Solana can process them all at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And then there's Turbine, which is a data propagation protocol, and this is actually inspired by BitTorrent.
BitTorrent, like the thing people use to download movies. What does that have to do with blockchain?
Yeah, it's all about efficient data distribution. Turbine breaks the data down into these little packets and spreads them across the network so it maximizes the throughput per unit of bandwidth.
Yeah.
And this is another big reason why Solana is so incredibly fast.
Okay.
And then let's not forget about state compression technology, which basically makes transactions, especially those involving NFTs, super cheap.
Okay, so we've got speed, we've got efficiency, we've got low transaction costs, especially for NFTs. It sounds like Solana has it all.
It does seem that way.
But there's always but didn't the FTX crash expose some vulnerabilities? Can Solana actually recover from that?
The FTX collapse was a huge shock to the whole crypto ecosystem, and Solana was definitely not immune.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that FTX was a centralized exchange.
Right.
And its failure isn't a reflection of Solana's underlying technology.
So it's like blaming the internet for a website going down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while some projects built on Solana did kind of disappear after that, a lot of them were probably better off gone anyway.
So less hype, more substance. Is that what we're seeing now?
Absolutely. And what I find really interesting is that the core Solana community, they seem even more dedicated now. It's like they went through this trial by fire and came out even stronger and more focused on building real sustainable applications.
Yeah.
We're seeing this surge in what people are calling DeFi 2.0. So these are new decentralized finance projects that are really pushing the boundaries of what's possible on Solana.
DeFi 2.0. Okay, you're going to have to break that down for me. What makes it different from the original DeFi?
So think of DeFi 2.0 as the next evolution of decentralized finance. It's all about improved security, sustainability, and a better user experience.
Okay.
And Solana, with its speed and low transaction costs, is just the perfect platform for these innovative DeFi projects.
Interesting. So it seems like the FTX crash, while it was devastating for a lot of people, might have actually had this kind of cleansing effect on the Solana ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
But there's another aspect of Solana's design that I'm curious about. You mentioned earlier that Solana is integrated as opposed to modular. Can you explain what that means and why it matters?
That's a great question. So think of it this way. Some blockchains like Ethereum, they're moving towards this modular design where different parts of the system are handled by separate layers,
Okay.
kind of like building a house with prefabricated components.
Right.
Solana, on the other hand, is all about streamlining everything into a single tightly integrated stack,
Okay.
more like building a custom home from the ground up.
So Solana is trading flexibility for efficiency.
Yeah, you could say that.
Are there any downsides to this integrated approach?
That's a key question, and it's one that's being debated a lot in the blockchain community. So
Yeah.
the integrated design, it makes it super easy and cost effective for developers to build on Solana. It's simple, it's fast, it's cheap.
Right.
However, some people argue that this might come with some compromises on decentralization, at least in the short term.
Okay. So that's a pretty big trade-off. Decentralization is kind of a big deal in the blockchain world, right?
It is.
Isn't sacrificing that kind of a risky move?
It's definitely a calculated risk.
Yeah.
The idea is that by making it so easy to build on Solana, they'll attract more developers and more users, which should ultimately lead to more decentralization down the road.
Yeah.
It's a gamble for sure, but it's one that they're betting big on.
It's like they're saying, come build the coolest stuff here and we'll figure out the decentralization thing later.
Right.
Is that a wise strategy? Or are they putting the cart before the horse?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
It's a bold strategy, and so far it seems to be working. There's a lot of buzz around Solana, even from big players outside the crypto world.
Oh, yeah.
Visa and Shopify, for example, they're already playing around with Solana integrations.
Wow.
That's a pretty huge vote of confidence.
That is. So even if Solana doesn't become this, Ethereum killer that some people are predicting, it sounds like it's already making some pretty big waves
Oh, absolutely.
and attracting some serious attention. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the power law. How can Solana, or any blockchain for that matter, realistically compete with these giants like Bitcoin and Ethereum?
That's a crucial point.
Mm-hmm.
In the world of smart contract platforms, there's this thing called the power law. And basically it means that a few dominant players tend to emerge.
Right.
And it's really hard for newcomers to break through.
Okay.
Think about social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah.
They dominate the landscape. It's
Yeah.
really hard for new platforms to gain traction because users and developers, they naturally gravitate towards the big names.
So is Solana just tilting at windmills here?
It's definitely an uphill battle, but I don't think it's impossible.
Okay.
Solana has some key advantages that could help them overcome this power law dynamic. Their integrated design that we talked about, it really sets them apart from the competition.
Right.
And their developer ecosystem is growing super fast. That's another big asset.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about the community that's building on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that community seems to be thriving, even with all the challenges like the FTX crash.
Yeah.
There's a real sense of excitement and innovation in the Solana ecosystem.
Okay. I'm starting to see why Solana is generating so much buzz, but let's be realistic. What are the chances of it actually surpassing Ethereum? Like, what are the key factors that will determine its success or failure in the long run?
That's the question everyone's asking. And it's one that we're going to explore further in our deep dive. We'll look at the remaining challenges for Solana, like achieving greater decentralization and attracting world-class developers. And we'll also dig into the specific ways it's being adopted in the real world with examples like those Visa and Shopify integrations. Stay tuned, because things are about to get even more interesting as we dive deeper into the world of Solana.
Can't wait. So we've talked a lot about the tech behind Solana and these really ambitious goals, but what about the people who are actually building on it? Like, what's the vibe of the Solana community?
From what I've seen, the Solana community is very pragmatic and efficiency driven. They're less concerned with like ideological purity and more focused on just building things that work and work well.
So it's less about, philosophical debates and more about getting things done.
Yeah, precisely. And they're not afraid to iterate quickly and maybe even break things along the way.
Yeah.
There's kind of that like move fast and break things mentality
Right.
that we saw, back in those early days of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, that's refreshing. Sometimes it feels like the blockchain world gets so bogged down in these endless discussions about decentralization and security.
Right.
Which, don't get me wrong, those are important, but it's also cool to see people just like building and experimenting.
Absolutely. And
Right.
that experimentation has led to some really innovative applications. We already touched on DeFi 2.0, but there's a ton of activity in NFTs gaming and even something called DePINs, which stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks.
The pins. Okay, that one's new to me. Can you give me like a concrete example of what a DPIN might look like on Solana?
Sure. So imagine a decentralized network of Wi-Fi hotspots.
Okay.
Powered by Solana. You could earn crypto just by sharing your bandwidth. That's a DPIN. Or picture a decentralized storage network where you can rent out your extra hard drive space. Solana's speed and low cost make it a really good platform for these types of projects. In fact, the Helium network, which provides decentralized wireless coverage, they recently migrated over to Solana.
Wow, so we're not just talking about like digital assets anymore. Blockchain is starting to bridge the gap between the virtual and the physical world.
Yeah,
It is. That's pretty mind-blowing.
it is. And Solana is really at the forefront of this trend. It's like they're building the digital infrastructure for this whole new Internet of Things, one that's more open, more resilient, and more accessible to everyone.
Okay, let's shift gears for a second and talk about money. We know Bitcoin is like the OG cryptocurrency.
Right.
And Ethereum has really established itself as the leading platform for smart contracts and decentralized finance. Where does Solana fit into all of this? Does SLL Solana's native token, does that have the potential to become a major player in the crypto world?
That's a great question. And it's one that I think a lot of investors are trying to figure out right now.
Yeah.
The value of any cryptocurrency, it all comes down to utility and adoption.
Okay.
And that's where things get really interesting for Solana.
So is Solana's success tied to the price of SLL?
I mean, it's definitely a factor if Solana becomes the go-to platform for all these innovative applications that we've been discussing. The demand for SOL will likely go up,
Right.
which could push the price higher. But it's not just about speculation. SOL is also used to pay transaction fees on the network.
Oh, okay.
So its value is directly linked to the activity that's happening on Solana.
So the more people use Solana, the more valuable SOL becomes.
Exactly. It's kind of this self-reinforcing cycle.
Right.
And here's another interesting thing. Some analysts believe that SOL could become like this digital gold within the Solana ecosystem
Oh, interesting.
because it's the native asset. It has the lowest counterparty risk,
Okay.
which makes it really good collateral for lending and other DeFi activities.
So it's like the bedrock of the Solana economy.
In a way, yeah. But, we talked about decentralization as a potential issue for Solana.
Right.
Doesn't that create some vulnerability?
Yeah.
Like if a single entity gains too much control over the network, wouldn't that undermine the whole point of blockchain?
That's a really good point.
Yeah. That's a valid concern, and it's something that the Solana team is definitely aware of as we discuss their integrated design.
Right.
It prioritizes speed and efficiency over decentralization, at least in the short term.
Right.
But they are working on solutions to increase decentralization as time goes on.
So it's this balancing act.
It is.
They're trying to get mass adoption while also making sure the network stays decentralized and secure.
It's always a balancing act with blockchain.
Right.
It's about finding those right trade-offs between security, scalability, and decentralization.
Yeah.
And there's no perfect solution. What works for Bitcoin might not work for Ethereum, and what works for Ethereum might not work for Solana.
So Solana's forging its own path.
They're taking a different approach and betting that it's going to pay off in the long run.
And that's what makes it so interesting to watch, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a bold experiment,
Yeah.
and it could have a really profound impact on the future of blockchain, but it's still early. The next few years are going to be really crucial for Solana.
So what should we be paying attention to specifically? Like, what are some key indicators of whether Solana is on the right track?
Well, I think one of the most important things to watch is how they address that decentralization issue.
Okay.
They've made some progress, but there's still more work to do.
Yeah.
They need to increase the number of validators on the network
Okay.
and improve the governance mechanisms so that no single entity has too much control.
Oh.
Another key factor is going to be the continued growth of the ecosystem.
So more developers, more projects, more users.
Exactly. They need to keep attracting that top talent and building a diverse range of applications to create a really thriving community. And of course, we'll be watching the price of SOL very closely.
Right.
It's a volatile market. But if Solana cannot really deliver on its promises, SOL could become one of the most valuable cryptocurrencies out there.
It's like we're witnessing the birth of a new technological giant right here in the Wild West of blockchain.
Yeah, and as with any pioneering venture, there are definitely risks involved.
That's a great analogy. And it's true, there are no guarantees of success in the crypto world,
Right.
but the potential rewards are huge. And that's what keeps drawing people to Solana, right?
Yeah.
This drive to build something groundbreaking, something that could really change the world.
Yeah, it's that frontier spirit, the
Yeah.
allure of the unknown, the possibility of creating something truly new and innovative.
So what's the next chapter in the Solana story? What should we be looking for in the coming months and years?
One of the key things is going to be how they tackle that decentralization issue like we talked about.
Yeah.
They've made progress, but there's more to do. And another crucial factor will be the growth of that ecosystem. Can they attract enough developers and users to build a truly thriving community? And of course, we'll be watching the price of SOL. It's a volatile market. But if Solana can deliver, SOL could become one of the most valuable cryptocurrencies out there.
It's like a high-stakes poker game, and Solana's holding a strong hand.
Yeah.
But the outcome is far from certain.
That's a great way to put it. And that uncertainty is part of what makes the crypto world so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving. It's a race to innovate and a battle for dominance. And Solana's right there in the middle of it, pushing the boundaries of what's possible and challenging us to rethink the very nature of technology.
So it sounds like Solana has the potential to be a really major player in the blockchain space, but it's not without its challenges.
Exactly. There's still some hurdles to overcome, but the progress they've made so far is really impressive.
Yeah.
And the community behind Solana is so passionate and dedicated. It'll be really interesting to see how things unfold over the next few years. But for now, let's dig into some of those challenges a bit deeper.
So welcome back to our deep dive into Solana. We've been really digging into its technology and its community and just its potential to really change the blockchain world. But let's be real for a second. No technology is perfect, and Solana is no exception. What are some of the hurdles it needs to overcome to really, reach its full potential?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Every emerging technology is going to have its challenges. And for Solana, one of the biggest ones is decentralization, like we talked about earlier. Their focus on speed and efficiency has led to some compromises in this area.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? A technology that's supposed to be all about decentralization is getting criticized for being too centralized. How big of a problem is this for Solana, and what are they doing to fix it?
It's a valid concern for sure, and it's something that the Solana team is very aware of and actively working on. A key strength of blockchain technology is its distributed nature, right? No single entity should have too much control over the network.
Right.
So to tackle this, Solana is working on several things at once. They're increasing the number of validators. These are the nodes that help secure the network and process transactions.
So more validators means more distributed control, right?
Right.
Making it harder for someone to manipulate the network or censor transactions.
Exactly. And they're also working on improving the network's governance mechanisms, so giving the community more say in how the platform evolves. And they're exploring new ways to distribute control even more effectively to make sure that no one entity can have too much influence.
So it's a work in progress, but it sounds like they're taking this issue pretty seriously and making some real changes. What about other challenges? We've talked about the importance of getting really talented people on board. How's Solana doing on that front?
Attracting and keeping top developers is essential for any blockchain platform, especially in the crypto world, where competition for talent is fierce.
It's like the new gold rush, but instead of panning for gold, they're mining for code.
Yeah, exactly. And Solana needs to create an environment that draws in those talented individuals, an environment where they feel supported, where they've got access to all the resources they need, and where they see real opportunities to build, truly innovative applications.
So it's not just about having the coolest tech. It's about building a community that makes developers want to be a part of it.
100%. The best technology in the world won't matter if nobody's building interesting applications on top of it. And on the flip side, even the most talented developers need a solid foundation to work with.
It sounds like Solana needs to be both a tech innovator and a talent magnet to make it big, but there's another piece of the puzzle that we haven't really talked about yet, and that's security.
Right. Security is absolutely crucial for any platform that handles financial transactions, especially in crypto, where trust is so important. Solana has had a few hiccups in this area in the past with some network outages.
Yeah, those outages definitely made headlines. How has Solana responded to that, and how worried should we be about security moving forward?
They've been really transparent about those incidents, and they've made some big improvements to make the network more stable and secure. They've learned from those experiences, and they're actively putting solutions in place to prevent those kinds of issues from happening again. But, it's important to remember that no system is ever going to be completely foolproof.
So staying vigilant is key.
Definitely, security is a constant process, a never-ending race to
Yeah.
stay ahead of the bad guys. And for Solana to really gain widespread adoption, it needs to show that it can consistently maintain a high level of security and reliability.
Okay, so we've got decentralization, talent, security, all huge challenges for Solana, but there's one more that I think is really important, and that's long-term sustainability.
Right.
The crypto landscape is constantly changing, new technologies are popping up all the time. Can Solana adapt and evolve to stay relevant in this super fast-moving space?
That's the big question, isn't it? It's not just about winning today, it's about staying ahead of the curve tomorrow. Can Solana keep innovating and attracting developers and users 5 years from now, 10 years from now? That's what will really determine its long-term success.
So how can they avoid becoming yesterday's news?
They need to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with blockchain technology, anticipate those future trends, and adapt to those changing market dynamics, and build a really robust platform that can evolve with the times.
So it's like they're running a marathon, but the finish line keeps moving.
Exactly. And that's the nature of crypto. It's constantly changing, and only the most agile and innovative will survive.
Okay, so lots of challenges, but also huge potential if we had to sum it all up for someone who's just starting to learn about Solana. What would be the main takeaway?
I'd say the main takeaway is this. Solana is a bold experiment, a bet on the future of blockchain technology.
Hmm.
It's all about speed, efficiency, and innovation. Whether it'll ultimately succeed in reaching those big goals, well, that remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, Solana is a force to be reckoned with, and it's shaping how we think about the future of decentralized technology.
It's like that saying, right? Shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars.
Exactly. Solana might not become the Ethereum killer, but it's pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and it's making everyone in blockchain think bigger and bolder.
And maybe that's Solana's real legacy, regardless of what happens in the future. It's inspiring a whole new generation of developers, pushing the limits of technology, and making the entire blockchain ecosystem stronger.
I think you nailed it. Solana is a catalyst for change, and that's something worth watching.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the fascinating world of Solana. We've covered a lot, but as always, there's so much more to explore. So keep researching, keep learning, and form your own opinions about this incredible platform. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.